Pierce, I'm amazed that you would invert this, that a victim of an anti-Semitic hate crime is now the harasser. This is always a story with the Jews. The Jews
You're an eternal victim.
It wasn't an anti-Semitic hate crime.
I am allowed.
Where was the anti-Semitic hate crime?
I am allowed. You asked me.
Where was the anti-Semitic hate crime?
Let me
Where was the anti-Semitic?
Let me respond. October 7th, Israel is attacked. Women have their breasts cut off. Terrorists are playing volleyball with their breasts, shooting them in their vagina.
Where was he anti-Semitic? Tell me.
And when Israel protects itself, of course, Israel's the aggressor and guilty of genocide.
Fine.
A rabbi
Where
is
was
walking
he
with his a rabbi is walking with his one-year-old grandson and with his 4 children. A man comes and lies and says, I'm a fan. He says, F Israel. I won't say the word because I'm not vulgar.
I've accepted that.
His girlfriend,
where was he anti-Semitic? At some point, the penny should drop, Rabbi Shmuley, that yes, it's not nice when people come up and say, fuck Israel to you, but that doesn't make them anti-Semitic. It doesn't make them a Jew hater. It means they don't like what the Israeli government is doing right now. And by the way, nor do most people around the world, actually, according to all the polls. So to try and conflate criticism of a state or a government with Jew hating or anti-Semitism, I think is one of the laziest tropes and most insidious tropes out there right now. Nothing Samuel has said makes me think he hates Jewish people or is anti-Semitic. He just doesn't like what Israel's doing in Gaza and other places, and nor do a lot of people. So you can have a problem with him being rude to you, and I agree with you. But the way you went after him for 10 minutes, the way that his girlfriend was clearly very upset, intimidated, and felt harassed by you, you would do that with impunity and be proud of it.
There is an important difference between being offended by something someone says and being able to prove that person is motivated by hatred. And that distinction completely changes this confrontation. An Icelandic man deliberately approached Rabbi Shmuley and told him, fuck Israel. It was provocative. It was rude. And the man openly admits that provoking Shmuley was exactly what he wanted to do. So nobody needs to pretend this was some polite political discussion. But then Shmuley took that confrontation several steps further. He called it an anti-Semitic hate crime. He accused the man of hating Jews. And he repeatedly presented himself as the victim of anti-Semitic harassment. But when Piers Morgan actually stops and asks a very simple question, where is the evidence that this man hates Jews? The argument starts getting much harder to defend. And this becomes even more interesting when Piers brings up Shmuley's broader pattern of confronting people in public. Because if we're going to call something anti-Semitism, we should have evidence. And if we're going to accuse somebody of committing a hate crime, we should have even more. I'm Neil. This is the honest perspective. Being offended is not the same thing as having the receipts. Let's get into it.
All right, I need to speak.
Children.
I need to speak.
Baby killers?
I need to speak. I want to focus specifically on this incident that everyone's been talking about and has watched. And my point to you, Rabbi Shmuley, is not that you shouldn't have been offended, if not outraged by what happened here. It's quite clear Samuel did go up, pretend to be a fan, and then said, fuck Israel, on camera, so that he could have a moment at your expense. I completely agree with you. I would have probably reacted badly too if someone did that to me. They have done it to me over the years, often completely erroneously, because they think my position on something is not what it is. But anyway, that's the fate of being in public life. I have 2 thoughts about what you've been saying and what I've seen. One is, if Iceland's that bad, why have you gone there on vacation? And secondly, I would say to you that your behavior in the 10 minutes that followed Samuel saying fuck Israel was outrageous, because there was a young woman clearly very intimidated by what you were doing, didn't want to be on camera. She had nothing to do with this. She didn't say anything to you. And I thought your continued harassment with her there looking intimidated and scared, and as Samuel has said, close to tears, I think was reprehensible. 2 things can be true at the same time.
And Piers is actually making an important distinction here. Samuel was deliberately trying to provoke Shmuley. He pretended to be a fan, approached him, and then used the encounter to make a political statement. We don't need to defend that. If you think that was dishonest, childish, or deliberately antagonistic, that's fair. But notice what Piers is also saying. The fact that Samuel behaved badly does not automatically mean that everything Shmuley says about him afterward is true. That's an important principle in any argument. One person behaving badly does not automatically prove every accusation made against them. And now we're about to see the accusation get much more serious. Because Shmuley isn't simply saying Samuel was rude. He's calling what happened an anti-Semitic hate crime. And that's where Piers starts demanding the evidence.
Piers, I'm amazed that you would invert this, that a victim of an anti-Semitic hate crime is now the harasser. This is always a story with the Jews. The Jews.
You're an eternal victim.
It wasn't an anti-Semitic hate crime.
No, I am allowed.
Where was the anti-Semitic hate crime?
I am allowed. You asked me.
Where was the anti-Semitic hate crime?
Let me
Where was the anti-Semitic?
Let me respond. October 7th, Israel is attacked. Women have their breasts cut off. Terrorists are playing volleyball with their breasts, shooting them in their vagina.
Where was he anti-Semitic? Tell me.
And when Israel protects itself, of course, Israel's the aggressor and guilty of genocide.
Fine.
A rabbi
Where
is
was he
walking with his 1 year. A rabbi is walking with his 1-year-old grandson and with his 4 children. A man comes and lies and says, I'm a fan. He says, F Israel. I won't say the word because I'm not vulgar.
I've accepted that.
His girlfriend,
where was he anti-Semitic?
His girlfriend stood with him the entire time. You should be pointing a finger at a misogynist who admits that he did not
Where
even
was
tell
he
his
anti-Semitic?
what we going over to an American Jewish citizen in middle of the street and harassing and making them feel very unsafe and attacking them when they're alone and don't know and saying F Israel to your face. That is anti-Semitism, pure and simple.
No, it's
and
not.
if you're a British man and if they walk over and say, if they say to you, Piers, Churchill killed 1 million German children.
Let me stop you there.
It was harassing.
Let me stop you there.
It was.
I'm
disappointed in you. I really am.
Wait a minute. Can you? Okay.
F
you know
Israel
what? I
is
don't
not
care.
a criticism.
I'm gonna
F Israel is not a criticism.
F
Israel is an attack on Jews. Saying I'm a dual citizen is a lie.
No, it's not an attack on Jews.
He's in his own grave. I don't even know.
No, it's not an attack on Jews. No, you accused him of being a Jew hater and of being anti-Semitic. Nothing I've seen in these videos
because he came over and lied and said I'm a fan and
was anti-Semitic.
And it happened 40 times while we're here. And the reason I'm here is because I love this country. Okay.
Fine.
Then let him walk over and say, "Can I say respectfully say I don't like you?"
Yeah.
Just to be clear, it's fine. You can. All right. I'll let Samuel respond.
I'm sorry. It shows the nature of your thinking and of also in the grander scheme of the nature of your warfare. For a man to approach you and your son, 2 men, one of them an IDF soldier, chasing down my girlfriend and largely ignoring me, pushing into me to get to her with the camera. You lie.
That is a lie. You are you are lying through your teeth. You are lying through your teeth. You are an anti-Semite who harassed you on the street, who lied and said you're a fan, and we did not follow your girlfriend. We followed you. You were with her the entire time. You admitted that you lied to her and said
on your own
that
video, buddy.
And now you're saying she was proud of you. You just said she's proud that you attacked me. I am sorry. Yes. I am sorry. Piers, American tourists who my taxpayer money kept this country safe for 80 years since the Cold War. My money. They don't spend $1 on defense. I am an American tourist. I deserve to be treated with a simple respect.
Rabbi Shmuley, you also live in a free... hang on 1 second. All 3 of us, Iceland, UK, America, all live in free democratic societies. If Samuel Goodmanson wants to say fuck Israel, he's legally allowed to say it. I wouldn't say it.
Is he allowed to harass me on the street?
Wait a minute.
With my 1-year-old grandson
Let me finish talking. Right? So I understand why you would be angry, but it doesn't justify the way that you harassed his girlfriend for 10 minutes.
So I did not harass
she was intimidated and very upset.
Sorry.
You did.
That is your
You did.
That is your
and you've accused him. And you've accused him. And you've accused him. And you
let's be clear.
Let me finish my point. No, let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. Not only did you harass his girlfriend,
you are blaming the victim.
No, shut up, Shmuley.
You are blaming the victim. You are blaming the victim.
You have accused Samuel of being anti-Semitic and of hating Jews. Nothing that he has said, either in those video clips or here on this program, says that he is anti-Semitic or hates Jews. He just opposes what Israel has been doing in Gaza. And by the way, two-thirds of your own... Wait a minute. Two-thirds of your own country, the United States, now have a negative view of what Israel, the state of Israel, has been doing in Gaza. His opinion is not an outlier. You know that Israel's popularity around the world has been plummeting because of the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. So the idea that because somebody criticizes Israel or the Israeli government, they are automatically Jew haters or anti-Semitic, as you have tried to frame this, is outrageous and completely wrong. He is not, from anything I've heard, anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish. So why say that?
May I respond? May I respond?
And this is the central issue. Piers isn't saying Samuel was a good guy. He's not saying Samuel's tactics were acceptable. He's asking a much narrower question. What exactly did Samuel say that establishes he hates Jews? Because there's a difference between saying fuck Israel and saying I hate Jews. Those statements aren't automatically interchangeable. Israel is a country. The Israeli government is a government. Jewish people are people who can live in Israel, America, Europe, Africa, or anywhere else in the world. You can criticize a government without hating the population associated with that country. And that distinction matters enormously here. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition itself says criticism of Israel comparable to criticism directed at any other country cannot, by itself, be regarded as anti-Semitic. That doesn't mean criticism of Israel can never become anti-Semitic. It absolutely can. If somebody attacks Jews because they are Jewish, blames Jews collectively for Israel's actions, or uses classic anti-Jewish conspiracy theories, that's different. But you still have to establish the connection. And that's the question Piers keeps forcing back onto the table. What did Samuel actually say about Jews? Not Israel, not Netanyahu, not the Israeli government. Jews. Now watch how this same issue of evidence comes up again when the conversation turns to Gaza.
Your country, Piers, had a 5-to-1 civilian to combatant death ratio in the Second World War. Churchill killed 5 German civilians for every 1 Wehrmacht soldier. Israel has killed 1-to-1, 1 civilian to 1
How do you know that?
terrorist combatant.
How do you know that?
That is
How do you know that?
You know that because I've debated this on your show 10,000 times.
No, these numbers have not been. These numbers have not been established.
Yes, they have, and I've done this.
These numbers have not been established. No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
So I'm asking you.
No, they haven't.
I'm asking you.
It's an absolute
question.
lie.
Here's, let me ask you.
You have no idea it is one-on-one.
You've no idea.
You have just invented. You've invented that number. You've invented that number.
Even according to the Hamas Health Ministry, which
and the reason we don't know. And the reason
it's easy to prove.
The reason we don't know exactly. The reason we don't. The reason we don't. The reason we don't know. The reason we don't know why how many civilians have died in Gaza is because 80% of Gaza got leveled to the ground, and the Israeli government will not let international journalists into Gaza to do their jobs, despite there being supposed ceasefire for many months.
That is
completely
a fraudulent
outrageous.
lie.
And so none of it.
CNN and Fox News,
it is not a lie.
Been in Gaza. The New York Times has
It's
been
not
in Gaza.
no.
The AP has been in Gaza. Bloomberg has been in Gaza.
No, stop lying.
Has been in
Stop
Gaza.
lying.
I'm sorry.
Stop lying.
I'm sorry.
Stop lying.
You are not telling the truth.
Stop
you
lying.
Are not telling the truth.
The only journalists who've been allowed into Gaza have been embedded with the IDF. I want international media, given there's a ceasefire, to be allowed to operate free, to be allowed to operate, to be. Well, you know what? You know what? The IDF has killed over 200 Palestinian journalists and tries to pretend they're all Hamas, which is also an outrageous lie. So I'm afraid there's a lot of disinformation flying around.
That is a lie.
I want to give. No, that's a fact. That's a fact.
That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact.
Oh, shut up about your blood libel. Let me bring in.
I'll tell you what.
And listen to the question Piers asks. How do you know that? That is exactly the question that should be asked of everybody in a political argument. Because a precise number can sound incredibly authoritative. But sounding precise doesn't make something true. If you're going to tell millions of people that Israel has killed 1 civilian for every combatant, you need to show where that number comes from. How were the people classified? Who independently verified the deaths? How were combatants identified? What methodology was used? Those aren't small details. They're the entire basis of the claim. And the same principle applies to the accusation we're discussing. If you call someone an anti-Semite, show the evidence. If you call something a hate crime, show the evidence. If you make a casualty claim, show the methodology. The standard shouldn't change because we like the person making the claim. And that's why I think the next part of this interview is important. Because Piers now moves away from this one incident and starts looking at a pattern. He's asking whether this confrontation is really an isolated incident, or whether Shmuley repeatedly puts himself into these public confrontations and then turns them into content.
Yes,
Can I respond?
I've unmuted you. But what I want to play you is this is a mashup of your confrontations with members of the public in various countries. Let's take a look.
Wait, guys, why are you running away? What'd you say? Yo, it's you! Fuck you, bro! Yo, fuck Palestine! Free Palestine! You think you could dress like this in Palestine? No. Jesus is my fellow Jew. I wrote a book called Kosher Jesus. He's a one guys. I wrote a book called Kosher Jesus. This coward, disgusting anti-Semite, said in front of the entire public that I am a power broker for Jeffrey Epstein. Wait, so you recognize me from Piers Morgan? You said you don't agree with my views about what? Michael Jackson. Your president, is that you support Argentina? Javier Milei loves Israel. Huh? Javier Milei loves Israel. No. Javier Milei loves Israel. Javier Milei. Because she walked over to me and started screaming Free Palestine because I wear a yarmulke? How is it that a British man is allowed to walk over to a Jew, and an anti-Semite walks over, attacks a Jew at an airport? How does he have a visa here?
Now, I would put it to you, Rabbi Shmuley, that you love this stuff. It gives you a lot of attention, a lot of clips, and that often you go out of your way to harass people whilst playing the victim. And I don't understand why you need to do that. It's a free country. People want to say what they want to say. Fine, let them. Have an argument with them, fine. But to film yourself going after people in the streets around the world constantly, you're clearly doing this for clicks. You're doing it for, to be, popular, whatever you think you're being. I looked at the comments under your post where you posted this encounter with Samuel. I don't know whether you've had a chance to read them. They are unrelentingly hostile and negative to you. And these are people largely who follow you on social media. At some point, the penny should drop, Rabbi Shmuley, that yes, it's not nice when people come up and say, fuck Israel to you, but that doesn't make them anti-Semitic. It doesn't make them a Jew hater. It means they don't like what the Israeli government is doing right now. And by the way, nor do most people around the world, actually, according to all the polls. So to try and conflate criticism of a state or a government with Jew hating or anti-Semitism, I think is one of the laziest tropes and most insidious tropes out there right now. Nothing Samuel has said makes me think he hates Jewish people or is anti-Semitic. He just doesn't like what Israel's doing in Gaza and other places, and nor do a lot of people. So you can have a problem with him being rude to you, and I agree with you. But the way you went after him for 10 minutes, the way that his girlfriend was clearly very upset, intimidated, and felt harassed by you, you would do that with impunity and be proud of it. And we just showed a mashup of you doing this relentlessly, makes me think you're doing this for publicity and clicks and playing the victim card. And I just don't think you need to do that.
Really. It's Machiavellian. He doesn't care.
May I respond? May I respond, or Samuel?
Well, let him have let him respond.
And it's a 2-on-1.
Let him respond,
yes.
Samuel.
You know, Piers. This is
a
sad day. This is a sad day for you personally. I'll tell you why. Because
no, it's not.
I didn't call you.
Fine.
No. Well, now you won't even let me speak. Will you let me speak? This is a sad day for you personally, Piers. First of all, you get 1,000 times more negative message. You get 1,000 times more negative messages on your feeds than I do, orders of magnitude. But I like you because you don't care what people say. Neither do I. I will stand for righteousness. Don't bring up what people comment. I couldn't care less. Number two. Your producers called me. Your producers called me to be on the show, so don't talk to me about clickbait. You're using this for clickbait. Number three, I only film people who threaten my life or attack me, like some of the clips you showed. I was physically assaulted in Vienna by 2 of my Palestinian brothers and sisters. I was physically attacked in Florida in a hotel where a man said, I'm going to take you out, and threatened to kill me and called me a baby killer. Jews have been called baby killers beginning in your country in Norwich, going back 1,000 years when we were accused of drinking the blood of Christians. There have been many decent Icelanders who have issues with the policies of the Israeli government, which they should, because Israel's a democracy, and have walked over and said, I'm ashamed at Samuel. I'm ashamed at my country. The man who set up this interview for your people you hired wrote to me saying, I am ashamed of the way my country has treated you. Samuel opened a can of worms for my 1-year-old grandson and my 4 children to be harassed, attacked, assaulted, feared for our lives. I can't walk down the streets.
What did you do when you
excuse me. And the only, and I'm not a violent man. I'm not a violent man. I have never touched anyone.
What was the motive behind that?
I have
you
no.
want to talk
The only, excuse me.
We've got in total
the only defense I have. The only defense.
Kill my girlfriend.
The only defense I have.
Israeli, he didn't even have a.
The only defense I have, Piers.
He was going to find her family.
The only defense I have, Piers.
I'm still answering hundreds of positive messages. I've only gotten 2 negative.
Because there are that many anti-Semites in the world, sadly. But let me tell you something, Pierce. The only defense I have is something that we Americans call. You muted me, but you won't mute him. This is a 2-on-1. Can I respond to your question, or will you not mute him?
Me in the street for saying thank you for dealing with him.
It can't be a 2-on-1 when I'm not even speaking.
The only defense I have is something called the First Amendment, enshrined in my Constitution, to record or film or respond to an absolute tsunami and wave of Jewish tourists being assaulted in Barcelona 2 days ago.
And now that we've seen the entire sequence, I think the real issue becomes much clearer. This isn't really a story about whether Samuel was polite. He wasn't. It's not a story about whether Shmuley had a reason to be angry. He did. And it's not even a story about whether anti-Semitism exists. Of course it does. The real question is whether the accusation matched the evidence. And that's a much higher standard. Let's start with the part that is easiest to establish. Samuel deliberately provoked Shmuley. He approached him. He pretended to be a fan. And he used the interaction to say, fuck Israel. He wanted a reaction. There is no reason for us to hide that. If someone wants to criticize Samuel for doing that, go ahead. But that's where we need to separate one accusation from another. Being provocative is not automatically anti-Semitism. Being rude is not automatically anti-Semitism. And saying something hostile about Israel is not automatically hatred of Jews. Those are different claims. And the reason that distinction matters is because the word anti-Semitism carries enormous weight. It should. Anti-Semitism is real. Jewish people have faced centuries of discrimination, persecution, and violence. And today, Jewish people can still face harassment and violence because they are Jewish. That should be condemned without qualification. But precisely because anti-Semitism is real and serious, we should be careful about how we define it. The IHRA working definition gives examples of anti-Semitism that include things like holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of Israel, using classic anti-Semitic stereotypes, or targeting Jewish people because they are Jewish. But it also says that criticism of Israel, comparable to criticism directed at another country, cannot, by itself, be regarded as anti-Semitic. That distinction is critical, because if somebody says, I hate Jews, that's an explicit statement about Jews. If someone says, Jews control the banks, that's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. If someone targets a Jewish person simply because they're Jewish, that's anti-Semitism. But if somebody says, fuck Israel, you may think it's offensive. You may think it's crude. You may think it's an unfair statement about Israel. But you still need additional evidence before you can logically conclude, therefore, this person hates Jews. And that's where Piers' challenge becomes so important. He keeps asking, where was the anti-Semitism? Not, was Samuel nice? Not, did Samuel deserve criticism? Not, was Shmuley offended? The question is, where is the evidence of anti-Jewish hatred? And from the footage we've watched, the evidence presented doesn't establish that. Now, there is another side to this. We shouldn't swing so far in the opposite direction that we pretend anti-Israel rhetoric can never become anti-Semitic. That's also false. There are people who use criticism of Israel as a cover for hatred of Jews. There are people who blame Jews collectively for the actions of the Israeli government. There are people who spread conspiracy theories about Jewish control of the media, banking, governments, or world events. There are people who attack Jewish people in countries thousands of miles away from Israel because they are angry about something the Israeli government has done. That is anti-Semitism. And if someone does that while claiming to support Palestine, we should call it out. No excuses. No political exemption. Because supporting Palestinian rights does not require anti-Semitism. And opposing Israeli government policy does not require hatred of Jews. Those positions can exist separately. In fact, they have to. Because otherwise, we're making an incredibly dangerous mistake. We're taking a government and a people and treating them as though they're the same thing. But they aren't. A Jewish person living in New York is not the Israeli government. A Jewish student in London is not Netanyahu. A Jewish family in Cameroon is not the IDF. And a Palestinian American criticizing Israel is not automatically Hamas. A Muslim person in Europe is not responsible for Hamas. An Israeli civilian is not automatically responsible for the decisions of the Israeli government. Once you understand that, the entire argument becomes much easier to evaluate. Now let's return to that casualty ratio. Shmuley makes a very specific claim. He says Israel has killed one civilian for every terrorist combatant. Piers immediately asks, "How do you know?" That's the right question. And I don't want us to lose that lesson just because the claim happens to come from somebody whose politics we disagree with. We should ask that question everywhere. How do you know? Where did the number come from? Who counted? What's the methodology? What assumptions were made? Can another independent organization reproduce the calculation? Because the Israel-Gaza war is one of the most information-contested conflicts in modern history. There are enormous amounts of information coming from governments, militaries, humanitarian organizations, journalists, activists, and social media accounts. Some information is accurate, some is incomplete, some is disputed, and some is simply wrong. That means we have to be especially careful with numbers. If the number is important enough to build an argument around, it's important enough to verify. And this is where the broader point about credibility comes in. Piers isn't just challenging Shmuley on one number. He's challenging the way Shmuley is presenting his arguments. Because after the original confrontation, Piers shows a compilation of other public confrontations involving Shmuley. And then he makes a provocative accusation of his own. You're doing this for publicity. Now, we should be careful here. Piers' accusation is an interpretation. The footage does not automatically prove Shmuley's motive. And that's important. We shouldn't make the exact mistake we're criticizing. Just because someone repeatedly records confrontations doesn't prove that every confrontation was manufactured for publicity. Shmuley gives his own explanation. He says he's documenting attacks against himself and Jewish people. He says he's responding to harassment. And he invokes his First Amendment rights. Those claims deserve to be considered, because anti-Semitic harassment is real. And if someone is being targeted because they're Jewish, they have every right to defend themselves and document what happened. But there is still a legitimate question about the way these confrontations are presented. If you repeatedly seek out political confrontations, film them, publish them, and turn them into content, viewers are entitled to examine the entire interaction. Not just the moment when the other person loses their temper. Not just the moment when someone says something offensive. The entire interaction. Who approached whom? What happened before the camera started? What was said? Who escalated? What was deliberately provoked? And what happened afterward? That's how you actually understand a confrontation. And once again, two things can be true at the same time. Samuel can have deliberately provoked Shmuley, and Shmuley can still have overreached with the anti-Semitism accusation. Samuel can have behaved badly, and the evidence can still fail to establish that he hates Jews. Shmuley can genuinely care about anti-Semitism, and he can still be wrong about a particular person. Those aren't contradictions. They're what happens when you refuse to turn politics into a football match. And this is especially important because criticism of Israel is no longer some fringe political position. Public opinion has changed significantly in recent years. Pew Research Center reported in 2026 that negative views of Israel had increased in the United States, with a majority of Americans expressing an unfavorable opinion. That doesn't prove Israel is right or wrong. It doesn't prove Palestinians are right or wrong. And it certainly doesn't prove that every person criticizing Israel is acting in good faith. But it does demonstrate something important. Disapproval of Israel is not synonymous with hatred of Jews. And that's something we should be able to say without hesitation. You can oppose the Israeli government's policies and still respect Jewish people. You can support Palestinian statehood and still reject Hamas. You can condemn Hamas's attacks on Israeli civilians and still believe Palestinian civilians deserve protection. You can condemn anti-Semitism and still criticize Israel. Again, two things can be true at the same time. That's actually the mature position. The immature position is believing that acknowledging one fact means you must deny another. And that's what political tribalism does. It tells you that if you're pro-Palestinian, you must defend every person who claims to support Palestine. No. And if you're pro-Israel, it tells you that every criticism of Israel must be anti-Semitic. No. Reality doesn't work that way. And that's why the standard on this channel has to be consistent. If a pro-Palestinian figure makes an anti-Semitic statement, we'll call it anti-Semitic. If an Israeli official makes a demonstrably false claim, we'll call it false. If Hamas commits an atrocity, we don't excuse it because we care about Palestinian civilians. And if Israel commits a documented violation of international law, we don't excuse it because Israel has legitimate security concerns. The evidence comes first. That's the only standard that can survive outside of tribal politics. And there is another reason I think this matters. When we throw around accusations like antisemite without enough evidence, we don't just hurt the person being accused. We also risk weakening the credibility of the accusation itself. Because eventually people start hearing the word so often that they stop distinguishing between a genuine anti-Semitic attack and a political disagreement. That's dangerous. When a Jewish person is genuinely targeted because they are Jewish, we need people to take that seriously. And if every argument about Israel is automatically labeled anti-Semitism, that becomes harder. The same principle applies to other serious accusations. If everything is genocide, then eventually people stop understanding what genocide means. If every political opponent is a fascist, eventually fascism becomes just another insult. If every disagreement is misinformation, eventually people stop trusting fact-checking. Words matter. And serious words need evidence. That's why this confrontation is worth examining. Not because Samuel was a hero. He wasn't. Not because Shmuley is incapable of being a victim of anti-Semitism. He can be. But because this particular accusation needs to stand on the evidence from this particular encounter, and Piers Morgan asked the question that needed to be asked, where was the anti-Semitism? If the answer is simply, he said fuck Israel, then that's not enough by itself. Because Israel is not synonymous with every Jewish person on earth. And criticizing Israel is not automatically an attack on Jews. The evidence has to establish that connection. That's the whole point. So here's where I land after watching this exchange. Samuel's behavior was provocative. Shmuley had every right to be angry about being deliberately deceived and provoked. But that doesn't give anyone permission to make a more serious accusation without evidence. If you're going to call somebody an anti-Semite, show us the anti-Semitism. If you're going to call something a hate crime, show us the evidence. If you're going to give us a casualty ratio, show us the methodology. And if you're going to ask viewers to believe your version of a political confrontation, give them the entire context. Because that's how you earn credibility, not by shouting louder. Not by claiming victimhood first. Not by attaching the most emotionally powerful label to your opponent. And certainly not by assuming your political side is incapable of being wrong. Show us the receipts. That's what the honest perspective is about. We can be progressive. We can stand with Palestinian civilians. We can criticize Israeli government policy. We can challenge Republican politicians. We can criticize billionaires and corporate power. But none of that gives us a license to abandon evidence. Because the moment we start bending the facts to protect our side, we've stopped doing commentary and started doing propaganda. And I'm not interested in that. If the evidence hurts our side, we follow it. If it hurts the other side, we follow it. If it makes the story more complicated, we tell you that too. Because the goal isn't to win every argument. The goal is to get closer to the truth. If you believe political commentary should be about evidence rather than tribal loyalty, subscribe to The Honest Perspective. Truth over access. People over profits. Live. Uncut. Unfiltered. I'm Neil. Follow the evidence, challenge the powerful, and never let a political label replace the receipts. That's The Honest Perspective, and that's where I'll leave you.